So thanks everyone for joining tonight. It's great to see so many people making the time. I know it's always tricky to find what time works best when families we know are so busy. So thank you all for joining. So for tonight, I'm just going to sort of go through a few kind of housekeeping things at the beginning here. And so we are recording this session because we do want to be able to have this posted to our website and to be able to share for other families who weren't able to make it tonight. So just so that you're all aware that it is recorded. You can feel free to have your screen off during the main part of the presentation. And I've got everyone just muted here so there isn't kind of that background noise while we have our presenter on here. So just to kind of introduce myself, my name is Keely Griffith. I'm a speech and language pathologist with our First Words teams. And I do the intake for our new First Words families coming in, as well as seeing some of the young families in our Birth to Five program. And we've got a number of our colleagues from the First Words team here tonight. So I think we've got Linda, Lauren, Erin, and Konica joining from First Words. And that's because our program kind of hosts this first Parent Ed Night of the year that we have. But just so you're aware, we do have other Parent Ed Nights that will be coming up. So there'll be another one in the winter and one in the spring to look forward to as well. Um, for sort of a little bit of a detail of how tonight's going to go. Our agenda is that first off, we have Catherine who will be presenting from Disability Alliance BC, and she will be going through a presentation for about 60 minutes at the beginning here. And then there'll be lots of time at the end as well for questions. So we will ask if you're able to hold questions towards the end, that would be great. That way, when people are asking more personal questions at the end, we'll be able to edit that part out of the recording more easily. So, but there's lots of time saved for that. And I've given her the feedback of some questions that parents have asked ahead. And so she's ready to add some information about that. And also, if there's anything that you're not comfortable asking to the group, feel free to message in the chat. You can actually direct message if you click who the message goes to, and you can select myself, Keely Griffith, and send that to me. And then I'm happy to share that as a more anonymous question as well. So also the information from the presentation tonight, Catherine's going to send us a copy of the slide deck from tonight, and she'll be able to also sort of share any other resources, and anything can be sent out by email afterwards. So I'll just kind of jump into the disability tax credit and what it is that we're talking about tonight. So we actually get this questions about this tax credit quite frequently from families, and it's something where we always kind of struggle with, how to support our families best in knowing who can access this and what the steps are for that. So we really wanted to go to the source and bring in someone who's an expert in doing this to help make this process a bit easier for our families. And even just seeing how many confirmed that they wanted to attend tonight shows that this is a hot topic for our families. And so it's exciting to have someone here that can help us with this. So without further ado, I will pass this over to, oh, actually, no, I will be passing it over to Catherine, but first I do want to do a proper introduction. So Catherine Dool is here from Disability Alliance BC, and a bit about Disability Alliance BC is that their mission is to support people with all disabilities to live with dignity, independence, and as equal and full participants in the community. They champion issues impacting the lives of people with disabilities through their direct services, community partnerships, advocacy, research, and publications. And Catherine herself has shared with me that she has worked as an advocate for Disability BC since April 2023. And prior to this, she worked in healthcare, and she has her Bachelor of Science in Nursing and an associate's degree in creative writing. She's also a person who lives with her own disabilities and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2017. At DABC, she works one-to-one with people to help them to apply for the disability tax credit. I'll warn you that as I'm about to pass it over to Catherine, we had a little bit of technical issues with her camera for tonight. So the PowerPoint is still working, and her microphone is still working, but it might be that the camera's cutting in and out, or it might just not be turning on. So I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I think we'll still be able to get all of the information across anyways this way. So now, without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Catherine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Keely. So we're going to talk about the disability tax credit and the RDSP. Um, you cannot see me, unfortunately, but that is a picture of me. And Keely has done a wonderful job of introducing me. And I do help people one-on-one. So I sit down with people and the type of draft that you would create with your doctor, your nurse practitioner, your audiologist. We create a draft to bring to them. So then you can review it together. Help practitioners just sign the draft. Otherwise, they can use that information for their own application. And that just kind of makes sure that everything is included that you want to be included and that the things that you need to be approved are there. I'd like to make a land acknowledgement. It's with gratitude. We acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional, ancestral, and stolen territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We honor the territories and the Indigenous people who inhabit this land. What is the disability tax credit? It's designed as a non-refundable tax credit intended to help cover the extra medical costs that Canadians with severe, prolonged, or mental physical impairments pay. It also helps people with disabilities or their support to reduce the amount of income tax they may have to pay. For the benefit, you can get a portion of this amount based on the amount of income tax you're paying. For the year 2023, it was $9,428. If a person doesn't owe income tax, like if they're just on persons with disability with the province, they're not going to end up getting money back as a refund. So it is one of those benefits where the more income tax you're paying, the more you'll benefit. When you are approved, depending on when your disability began, they can retroactively review up to 10 years of income taxes. And any unused credits amounts can be transferred to a caregiver to help reduce their taxes. I should mention as well, because it's not really well added on the form, the amount will always be applied to the person with the disability first, and then transferred to the caregiver, whatever is left. So for the supporting family member, this can be spouse, parents, guardians, legal representatives. For other family members, you'll need an adjustment letter to request that. There's a bunch of other benefits associated with the disability tax credit, like the Canada Workers Benefit, Child Disability Benefit. You can claim some medical expenses, but again, it's mostly non-refundable. Caregiver credit, home buyer's amount. So if you're buying a new home, you can pay less income tax. Home accessibility tax credit. So if you need to add ramps or grab bars in your shower, those sort of things would be under that. And as well, the Registered Disability Savings Plan is the big one, as well as there's going to be the new Canada Dental Benefit attached to this and the Canada Disability Benefit. I was asked to go in a bit detail about a couple specific ones. So the Canada Caregiver Benefit for adults, this is a non-refundable, so again, you'll be paying less income tax. It helps caregiver expenses involved of taking care of a family member who's been approved for the DTC. Again, it could be a physical or mental impairment. It has to be that that person is dependent on you because of their impairment, born before 2005, and is a resident of Canada at the time. So you can't claim for relatives out of country. And you or someone else can claim this amount for a spouse, common law partner, or dependent. It can affect other claims that are made. And this is one of the credits where you need to claim it when you're filing your income tax. When it comes to the kids, again, non-refundable. This is you or your spouse or common law's partner or adopted child, or a child that is under your custody and control who's dependent on you for support. Again, physical or mental functions, impairment, either or. And it has to be for a child that they need more help than children their age with no impairments. So kind of everything in the paperwork is going to compare your child or your person to a person their age with no impairments. It can only be claimed by one parent. And again, you need to claim it when you're filing your income tax. And the child disability benefit, it's based on your net income. You have to already be eligible for the Canada Child Benefit, and you have to be approved for the disability tax credit and under 18. There's a maximum monthly amount of $264.41 per eligible child. So this is for families who their net income is $79,087 or less. As your combined family income increases, that amount does decrease. And the Canada Disability Benefit is included with the Canada Child Benefit, so they will come together. This one you do not need to apply for. It will be automatically calculated for you and provided for you. So being eligible for the disability tax credit, you need to have a social insurance number, and you also need to have a severe and prolonged impairment. And again, it can be physical or mental. Severe means that the person either has a marked restriction, so they're very restricted in one activity of daily living, so they either can't do that activity, they need a lot of help to do that activity, or it takes them 3 times longer to do that activity than other people. Most people do end up getting approved under the cumulative effect of significant restrictions. So this is if they're restricted, but in 2 or more of the activities. And together those activities create a marked restriction. So this would mean that it takes you twice as long to do 2 or more of the different categories. There's also life-sustaining therapy. So anyone in need of a therapy that keeps them alive, like insulin, dialysis, oxygen, that would be under life-sustaining therapy. Prolonged, it means that it has lasted or will last at least 1 year. Substantially all the time means that it's present all or most of the time, so at least 90% of the time. Is not directly connected to a diagnosis. So in order to be approved, it's based on how severely you're impaired by your restrictions in your day-to-day living. So simply writing down a diagnosis will not help. As well, you don't actually need to have a specific diagnosis. People that are still waiting for a diagnosis but have significant impairment in their daily living can apply. You do need to provide very specific examples of how your disability or diagnosis impacts your daily activities. It does not have to do with whether a person can work, go to school, and it doesn't depend on income or assets. So this is kind of nice in that it's one of the few benefits that acknowledges that some people with disabilities are able to work and actually make okay money, but they still live with a disability. So the basic activities of daily living that they've included are vision, speaking, making and eating food, hearing, walking, eliminating, which is your bowel and bladder functions, getting dressed, and mental functions. Who can fill out the form? Medical doctor or nurse practitioner can fill out all parts of the form. An optometrist can do the vision section. Audiologist can do hearing. Occupational therapist can do walking, feeding, and dressing. And the combination of those, which for a lot of people who can't find a doctor or nurse practitioner, that is a very helpful person. Physiotherapist can do the walking. Psychologists can do the mental functions necessary for everyday life. And your speech language pathologist can do speaking. There's no one preferred medical professional, but if you're a person that needs to be approved through the cumulative effect of many sections, it's often easier if you have a doctor or nurse practitioner so that they can fill out those sections. But as long as you're meeting the threshold of what they're asking, it doesn't matter which of the professionals you have fill out the form. So I'll go into some different examples. In the hearing category, it'll ask, are they deaf? Do they require lip reading? Do they communicate primarily with sign language? Do they use any medications that would help with their ability to hear? Do they use any devices or therapies? So like hearing aids, cochlear implants, alerting devices, personal FM system, even if a person prefers texting or writing things as opposed to speaking and hearing from others. And then it'll ask as well if the person requires assistance from others. There gets to be really specific questions like, do they experience an impaired awareness of risk to their personal safety due to their hearing loss? Do they require lip reading to follow conversation? Do they require repetition following conversation? Do they need sign language to follow conversation or have difficulty hearing when there's poor lighting or when a speaker is not facing them? And are they at risk during an emergency due to their hearing loss? So some examples under hearing: the patient has markedly restricted hearing if all or substantially all the time. He or she is unable to take 3 times longer to hear, to understand another person familiar with the patient in a quiet setting, even with the use of appropriate devices. The patient often relies on lip reading, usually, despite the use of a hearing aid, to understand spoken conversation. In your office, you must raise your voice and repeat words and sentences several times. Or the patient is at risk for danger due to their inability to be woken by alarms during an emergency. I just wanted to continue the hearing a little bit just based on some specific questions that were brought up. So when you're talking and thinking about the hearing category, anytime that there's visual cues that are compromised, if that becomes an issue for hearing, whenever distance to the speaker is a factor for hearing, any environment where the speakers, even if it's familiar to the client, are not using effective communication strategies, during situations where members of the family need to communicate with the client while they're sleeping. I'll talk a bit about the unilateral hearing loss. So some of the ideas when you're adding to this category, think about things like if you're riding in the car, if the deaf side is facing the driver and they can't communicate, interacting in circular group meetings, which can be difficult even if participants are speaking one at a time, and even worse if distance is a factor for a larger circular discussion. And if there's whispering communication into the deaf ear in quiet environments such as church, lectures, or trainings. So in order to be approved for the hearing, if you're going to only have the hearing category and no other category, it needs to take you 3 times longer to understand someone in a quiet setting substantially all the time. In order to be approved with hearing with other sections, you need to take twice as long to understand someone in a quiet setting substantially all the time. And then you need to take twice as long to do one of the other categories as well. There's no audiological criteria related to eligibility. Approval is based on how a person is impacted by their disability. So there's really specific examples of what cause you to need more time or what things are difficult or you need assistance with are really important here. Another category for speaking, do they primarily use sign language to communicate? Do they take any medications that would help with speaking? Any devices or therapies like a voice amplifier, speech language pathologist, talk therapy, even counseling if they've worked on speaking? Do they require assistance from others? Like if a child is mute in public and parents need to speak on their behalf? Do they experience things like difficulty thinking of the words they want to say? Difficulty articulating themselves? Do they speak with a stutter? Do they have an impaired ability to be understood without repetition? Are there any issues with the vocal sound of their voice, like it's really hoarse or quiet or strained? Or like I'd mentioned, the selective mutism. So people that are unable to speak in certain situations, that can as well be added to the speaking category. And you want to be adding how often they occur, such as rarely, occasionally, often, usually, or always. So some examples for speaking. The patient has difficulty pronouncing S and F sounds always, and is delayed in speech development when compared to another child of his or her age substantially all the time. The child speaks too quietly to be understood by others usually, when speaking to unfamiliar people. The client has an impaired ability to be understood without repetition often due to mispronouncing words. The feeding category, this one would ask if they eat by using a feed tube. Do they take any medication that would help with their ability to eat or prepare food? Do they have any devices or therapies that they use? This could be adaptive dinnerware, utensils, hand-friendly devices, pre-made or ready-made meals, or using Uber or takeout food because you can't prepare food. Have you done physiotherapy, occupational therapy, seen a kinesiologist, all for things that would physically help you be better to prepare food? And then it also asks if they require assistance from others to eat or prepare food. It's really important in this paperwork to kind of take notice of things that require extra assistance, either that other people don't need assistance with, or that's beyond what most children their age would need assistance with. And it'll ask really specific things like, do they have an impaired ability to swallow, fatigue, impaired coordination, impaired dexterity, limited range of motion, muscle weakness, pain, back, arms, legs. And then you're just very specific again with where the pain is, how often the pain occurs. Some examples here for the feeding category. The patient has severe fatigue always and is unable to stand for longer than 10 minutes at a time. She needs to sit down when preparing food and use a slow cooker, rice cooker, or other device not requiring ongoing standing or stirring. The patient has difficulty grasping utensils and needs to use larger utensils. He or she takes more time to eat due to difficulty with dexterity always. The patient has moderately impaired coordination often and needs to use cups with lids to decrease spills. Mental functions is a little bit different than the other categories. Again, it's going to ask if they take medication, but it's also going to ask how effective the medication is. Do they need a reminder to take the medication? And then do they use any devices that help with mental functions? Things like a GPS, cell phone reminders, specific calendars, planners, smartwatch, different apps you might use. It's also going to ask if they have the capacity to live independently or not. And if that is impaired, it's going to ask what their support is, like assisted living, community-based health services, support from family members. And this section will also ask for children, do they need more support beyond what most children their age would need? And do they need extra support in the classroom? It'll also ask if they receive any therapy, such as counseling, group therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, any type of therapy, equine therapy, if I can pronounce it appropriately. So some examples for a person in mental functions, the patient is slow at reading. He's currently reading at a grade 3 level when his peers are reading at a grade 6 level. The patient needs extra assistance from teachers and educational assistants at school. She's on an individual education plan and takes 2 times longer to read when compared to her peers. And has difficulty focusing in formal settings such as a classroom. She needs minimal distractions and is permitted to do tests in a different room to minimize distractions from her peers. And mental functions is a bit different in that it's kind of set up as different categories and a long list of check marks. So categories are attention, concentration, memory, judgment, perception of reality, problem solving, goal setting, regulation of behavior and emotions, verbal and nonverbal comprehension, and adaptive functioning. So there will be specific questions under all those subcategories, and it'll ask if the person has no limitations. So something they're totally fine to do is not a problem for them. Maybe they have some limitations, they can do it sometimes, but not other times, or it's difficult, but they can do it. And then very limited capacity is something they either cannot do or that's incredibly difficult for them to do. Any symptoms that are persistent and episodic can qualify. For the episodic, if it's unpredictable in nature, that would be considered a limitation all the time because you don't know when that's going to occur. Examples in mental functioning, under adaptive functioning, has anxiety and difficulty with basic interactions, such as going to a bank teller or cashier, has difficulty adapting to changes. Any last-minute changes in plans cause him or her to have a meltdown, has anxiety when going out of the home. He or she repeatedly makes excuses or tries to delay leaving. Under concentration, unable to focus on a simple task for more than a couple minutes at a time, has difficulty absorbing and retrieving information in the short term. And then regulation of behavior and emotions, experiences depression and spontaneous episodes of crying, is unable to control angry outbursts, lives with constant anxiety, and is easily overwhelmed. And then the category of life-sustaining therapy is also a bit different. Life-sustaining therapy has to be something that you do at least 2 times a week and at least an average of 14 hours a week. So like insulin for diabetes, kidney dialysis if you're having oxygen. And then there's kind of a bit of a breakdown when you do go through the form that kind of shows like the amount of time you take to figure out how much insulin you need, to figure out how many calories you need to eat, all those sorts of things. For kids under 18, 2 of the big things are adult supervision at home beyond what is age appropriate for their level, and additional support that's needed from educational staff at school. So under mental functions, just some of the things to think about. Does the child need one-to-one supervision for safety? Does the child need more frequent reminders and prompts to get ready for school every day? Does the child understand basic road safety rules? Can the child express specific needs? Can the child communicate with and be understood by peers or siblings? Can the child play games with others or participate in organized sports? How does the child's impulsivity manifest? Does medication make a difference for this child? Some examples for in terms of reaching milestones for their peers. This would be ages 5 to 8. The patient has difficulty playing social games with other children and shows no interest in other children. For example, during a recreation program, they prefer to play alone most of the time. To complete day-to-day goals, the patient must stick to their routine, and they will become frustrated if the routine deviates. They struggle with making decisions independently, and if decisions are outside of their usual routine. The patient receives one-to-one support from teachers while at school. They only take 2 classes currently, English and math. They need frequent reminders and prompts to get ready for school every day, and parents need to knock on the bedroom door 20 times in the morning. Some of the phrases that are helpful when writing this: substantially all the time, so that's at 90% of the time or more. Anything that requires assistance is really important. Unable to manage an activity, takes 2 or 3 times longer to complete that activity. For children especially, the not expected to reach milestones of same-aged peers. For this paperwork, you don't include anything that has to do with your ability to work, housekeep, manage a bank account, drive, or do recreational activities, as these do not matter to the CRA. So how do you apply? There's a couple different ways. You can get the paper form, the first page and second page, part A. You fill it out, your information if you have a supporting family member, and then you would take that to your doctor or nurse practitioner or healthcare provider, and then they would fill out part B of the form. Once that's filled out, you can either mail it into the CRA or you can upload it to your CRA My account. There's also newly a digital form. So you can actually go online to your CRA My account and fill out part A, or you can call the CRA and tell them what you would like included in your part A, and they'll give you a reference number. If you get a reference number when you do go to your doctor's appointment, if they put that reference number in at the start of the appointment through the online application, it will automatically submit that application at the end of that appointment when they finish. Pros and cons to this. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you a chance to review what's been written, so you can't know if the things are there that need to be there to be approved, but it's also a very quick way to get it sent in. Once it is sent in, if you do fill it out online, you can also print it and again, mail it to the CRA or upload it to your CRA My account. So mailing in goes to Winnipeg Tax Center. There's also the online CRA My account. And then if you have given your doctor that reference number and your doctor has used the online tool to go through the application, at the end of that appointment, when your doctor finishes, that'll be automatically submitted. Now what? It usually takes about 3 to 4 months to hear back from the CRA regarding a decision. Although more recently, I've kind of heard more people saying that their wait is a bit longer than usual. So if it is longer, do not stress. And then processing times and the status of the application can be checked online from your CRA My account. It is also possible that the physician, nurse practitioner, occupational therapist, or whoever filled out the questionnaire or filled out the form will end up getting a questionnaire requesting them to give more information about your disability to the CRA. This is usually when not enough information has been given and they're unsure what your disability really looks like. You can also call in the CRA to check the status of the application. So once an application is submitted, like I just mentioned, your healthcare practitioner might end up getting extra questions, or you'll be approved. Usually when people are approved, it's for a certain number of years. And then when you are approved for a certain number of years, you have to reapply the year that it is expiring. Or you could be denied. If you are denied, you can always reapply. You don't have to wait any amount of time. You can just send in a new application. You can also send in more medical information to the CRA, or you'd have 90 days to submit a formal objection. We do suggest you keep all copies of all of these documents. When it comes for kids, they're always going to need to reapply, which is incredibly frustrating. I've talked to a lot of parents who are like, my child will still be autistic in this many years. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, the CRA always has kids need to apply at age 18. I often see people only applied for like 4 years or approved for like 4 years or 8 years at a time. So if it is a shorter amount, don't be surprised. And then renewing the application, we'll literally be doing the entire application all over again. So if you have kept your previous application and you do have the very same or similar impairments in functioning, you can always go through, update that information and send your application that way. For adults, it is possible to get indefinite or for all future years approval, but it needs to be indicated in the submitted disability tax credit that the person's condition will not improve. So kind of the last question on each page for the different sections. We'll ask if the person's disability will improve. If it's a yes, it gives a space that you can put the year that it would be expected to be approved. So this is things like sometimes if someone's waiting for like a hip and knee replacement, maybe they're going to live with their disability but are expected to be okay after that. That would be one of the times that a year would be put there. Any unsure will not end up with the indefinite approval. And so it needs to say no, that the client is not anticipated or expected to improve to the extent that they would no longer be considered disabled. So once you are approved for the DTC, you can open an RDSP. The RDSP is created by the federal government, and it's meant as a long-term savings plan for people with disabilities and their families. It can help people even if they can't put any money into that plan, and it won't affect other disability benefits. So who qualifies? To be eligible, you need to be a Canadian resident, have a social insurance number, and approved for the disability tax credit. In order to just open the RDSP, you need to be in the year that you're turning 59 or younger. So unfortunately, this means like somebody, say they're turning 60 in June, but they've been accepted in February. They're already in the year they're turning 60 and they can no longer open that account. And then in order to open the account and get the grants and bonds, you have to be in the year you're turning 49 or younger. The reason somebody after that, up until 59, might apply for the RDSP, anyone who is on persons with disability with the province, money that they put away in the RDSP is not counted as assets against their PWD payments. So if a person has been in an accident or is expecting a settlement or something like this, and they are on persons with disability, the RDSP is a really good place that they can keep that money without having their payments clawed back. And then for the grants and bonds, again, it's in the year you turn 49 or younger. So anyone in their 40s, very important to get on it sooner than later. So the RDSP grant amounts for family incomes that are less than the $111,733, for the first $1 you add, the federal government will add $3. The next $1,000, every $1 you add, the federal government will add $2. So if you're able to add $1,500, the federal government will add $3,500, and that's for up to 20 years. And then there's also bonds. So if your family income is less than or equal to the $36,502, the maximum a person can receive is $1,000 in bonds every year until December 31st of the year they turn 49. If their income is in between the $36,502 and the $55,867, they can still get partial bonds. There is no personal contribution that is required for the bonds. They will just be added automatically. And again, this is for a maximum of up to 20 years, which is a maximum of up to $20,000. So if you're under 49, you can access up to $90,000 in government bonds and matching grants. We do have on our website for Disability Alliance of BC an RDSP calculator that can help you kind of determine how much growth you could see in your RDSP. For retroactive claims for grants and bonds, similar to the way that the CRA will reevaluate up to 10 years of taxes in the past, they will also be willing to do grants and bonds for up to 10 years before that person applied. And again, this is depending on what year their disability began. So if it only began 5 years ago, they could only go back that 5 years. But for most of us with very long-standing disabilities, you can get that 10 years. Again, you need to open it by December 31st of the year you turn 40. Very, very important. Unfortunately, as soon as you're in the year that you turn 50, you are no longer eligible for any of the grants and bonds. Any bonds that you are owed will be received automatically. And you can talk to a financial advisor about how much money you should put in and the best way to get the grants and bonds. So for withdrawals, they can be made penalty-free after the person with the RDSP is in the calendar year that they turn 60. Early withdrawals are possible, but can be subjected to a repayment. So the 10-year rule, the 10-year repayment rule, if you take money out before you're 60 or before it's been 10 years since you received any grants and bonds, you will have to pay back the amount of grants and bonds that you've had. So for every $1 that you withdraw early, they'll take away $3 of money that they've provided for you. It won't take away the money that you've added, but it would rapidly take away the money you've received from the federal government. This is just intended as a way to make sure that it stays as a long-term savings plan. Now, people who, if your child is opening an RDSP, like I think my one cousin was about the age of 5, she received the 20 years of grants and bonds. So then by the age 35, because it had been 10 years past when she had last received contribution, she could actually start withdrawing at age 35. So when you can withdraw has a lot to do with when you open the account. The Vancouver Foundation also has a $150 grant available. This is for all children under the age of 18 or adults who earn under $30,450 a year or who've been receiving income assistance since 2008. So at Disability Alliance BC, we do help people with those applications. Like I had said, we create that draft that you can bring to your physician or nurse practitioner. We also partner with Plan Institute, who helps people set up the Registered Disability Savings Plan and can answer a lot of very specific questions about the RDSP and how you should go about planning, what your options are, if you want really specific education regarding your investments. And then the BC Aboriginal Network on Disability Society helps individuals who identify as Aboriginal with setting up an RDSP as well. Are there any?
Catherine, I feel like I've lost hearing you there.
When did you lose me?
Oh, now it's back. I'm not sure if that was for everyone, but it was just at the very end there where you're about to ask, are there any questions? And now it's back.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to click unmute and ask those right now. And Jordy, I see you've got a raised hand. So Jordy, if you want to ask a first question, and also as a reminder, if anyone does prefer not to ask out loud, feel free to message me in the chat, and you can adjust the chat to say that it goes to Keely Griffith if you prefer, and I'll read it out. But Jordy, you go ahead.
Hey there, hi. George's wife, Kian. Thanks for setting this up. I just want to ask, so our son when we first applied, we didn't know. We kind of went into this a bit ignorant, and we got denied initially, and then we submitted more information, and with the help of Cam's audiologist and Kanika from Children's Hearing and Speech, we gave more information and got approved, thankfully, for 5 years. I was just wondering, I guess you covered a bit there, that it would essentially be a whole new application. Do they consider that he was initially approved as part of like that intake? And can we submit the same documents, even though they're dated for when he was younger, for this new application? I think we can get updated, but do we still include like the previous ones as well?
So unfortunately, it is a totally new application. They don't really look at whether or not you were previously approved. They kind of look at it new, like, does this person's limitations still fit what they're going through? As long as the medical documentation is still relevant and accurate to what a person's disability is, then it's totally acceptable to go in. We do even see this with people that we help fill out the disability tax credit who take like a year or two to find a practitioner to sign it. As long as the information is still current and relevant to their disability, totally fine to do. And if you do have the previous information that did help you get approved, I would hold on to that and make sure that that's added into the new application. And you can always get on the list as well as DBC to have help. We do have parents who are like, you know, next year is the year my kid's going to need it redone. And we can set it up even a couple months early just so that you have it ready to go.
Okay, and how's the best way to get in touch for that, like contacting you guys to help fill it out?
See if it goes back. So we've got our number here, the 604-872-1278, or
Okay.
you can email us at the rdsp@disabilityallianceofbc.org.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Keely.
Oh, sorry. Just looking, I see another raised hand there. Lois, did you want to go ahead and ask?
Yes. So I have a question for my daughter. So my daughter is only 10 months and she has hearing loss. So we have like a weekly speech therapist meetings and for that. And we don't know if we're really eligible for the DTC or not, because we cannot provide a really concrete example that like she run take like twice longer than like normal people, right?
It's all the things that in day-to-day life, like if you like, can you think of examples now of what's difficult for her? Like, does she need to have teachers, you know, maybe after they've told the lesson to the class, come and like tell her again what that was, just because she might have missed some of it? Does she need to get stuff in writing because she hasn't heard it at school? It's just all of the really little things. And I know a lot of times we have to be like the person living with a disability in order to explain the things we're frustrated with. So I would ask her as well, you know, what do you find really difficult or frustrating? Like, what are kind of the barriers that you're dealing with, and even like trying to communicate with other kids or making friends? Just kind of those sort of examples. I'm not sure. Does that help at all?
Okay, I think maybe the one thing because like my baby daughter is running like a little, right? 10 months cannot run talk. But like when we go to the like speech therapist like regularly, I think that may be one example that I can provide.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think there was a mishearing there. But yeah, she's only 10 months old in this example.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said 10 years.
Which would
I'm so
be
sorry.
common for a lot of our families, where they really have someone who's quite little, but they are getting fairly regularly getting support services, knowing that kids with hearing loss are at risk if they're not getting that level of service early on. So I assume maybe there's things that the speech therapist or teacher of the deaf who's working with the family might also be able to suggest that we're working more on because of their being at risk.
Yeah, and one of the other things as well is including things that are anticipated to be difficult. So if you are understanding now that the hearing loss is going to be an issue with learning, anything that's kind of anticipated or projected, like you're talking about going to the speech therapist, if it's going to take more years or longer for her speech to develop, those anticipated things are things that you can include.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
No worries.
We're not seeing any other virtual hands raised, but also some might have just not found that button yet. So if anybody else has a question, feel free to pop on here. Oh, now I see Jordy's got a hand raised again. Jordy.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks. About opening up the sorry, I forgot the acronym for it, but the
RDSP.
RDSP, yes, thanks. Is that done through like a financial institute, like a Royal Bank? And we contact them to essentially open it up for in this case, for our son?
Correct. Yeah, you go to your financial institution. I know I'm with BMO, and like I couldn't just walk into BMO and open up one. They actually have a specific number to call. And you don't actually, once you're approved, you don't actually even need the letter proving the approval. The CRA and the banking institutions and credit unions actually have an agreement where if you want to open an RDSP, they'll let your banking or credit union know whether or not you have the DTC, and you can do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And if for some bizarre reason we don't get in 5 years approved again, what happens to that account?
It's basically put on pause.
Okay.
So either until you have the DTC again, and then it just picks up exactly where you left off, or until the time passes and you can actually reopen that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any others? Or feel free to type in the chat. I'm not seeing any others come on here. I'm gonna do a one last call for if anyone has any last questions. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
now
So
I see.
other question, sorry. So regarding like the tax credit, so because like both my like one wife and I are working, right? So like who should I apply for this? Like higher incomers or like just like a new?
Whoever is paying the most income tax is the person you want on that form.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, ironically, the more income tax you pay and the more money you're making, the more benefit that you get directly from the DTC. So very unlike other disability supports.
Okay, great.
I still see Jordy with the raised hand. No, that wasn't your name. That's your partner's name on there, but I can't remember.
Oops. Sorry. Yeah. No.
Okay,
Nothing.
that one's answered.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I think we're slowing down on questions here. Certainly, if any other questions come up, it sounds like we've got the contact here for Disability Alliance. So I'm sure then it sounds like, Catherine, we can just encourage our families to send an email if they do have further questions that come up.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I know there's often a lot of specific questions regarding specific situations, and we can kind of like brainstorm on those as well, because sometimes we interact with like healthcare providers will be like, this person should be approved. I don't know how. So we can always help with that brainstorming and figuring it out.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that sounds really great to me as one of those providers, because we sometimes do feel like we just don't know exactly how to be answering this accurately. So it's wonderful to know that there's some supports out there. So I greatly appreciate your time here tonight, Catherine. And thank you to all the parents that have joined tonight. We have recorded this session and we're hoping that we will be able to post it on our CHSC website so that other families can access it, or if you want to be able to go back and relook at this information. And then we'll also collect the handout from Catherine as well and email that out to everyone from our center that wants that information. And I certainly know that for myself, I definitely learned a lot tonight. There was quite a few areas I was trying to make some little notes about, and that have really answered some questions that we've heard from families over the years. So thank you so much, Catherine, for giving your time tonight to join us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, well, thank you to all the parents, and I hope that you're all able to go and manage bedtime now, or maybe get some dinner in. Thank you for joining at this time. We will also be sending out a survey for feedback. We really value if you're able to just take a couple minutes. It'll be short, I promise, just to let us know and sort of what you appreciated, or anything you'd like to suggest for the future would be helpful too. We're always looking for what topics are helpful for parents, so that we've got ideas for other speakers to bring in as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Bye.
I'm just going to stop our recording.